Hi, everyone. Welcome to a talk about Japan, a wonderful travel log with Diana St. James. I'm Shireen Ash from the Marin County Free Library. I'm here to share this presentation with you. This presentation will be recorded and available to be viewed at the Marin County Free Library YouTube website, along with some other great talks by Diana and master gardeners and children's story times. So a lot of programming that you can find there. So I encourage you to look. That's MCFL or Marin County Free Library YouTube station. So again, just a quick reminder to mute yourselves, please, so that the program can be uninterrupted by invading puppies and doorbells and that kind of thing. So today, I'm very excited to present Diana St. James. She's a wonderful speaker and an amazing traveler and a lovely person. She's worked in the travel industry for over 30 years. She's the co-owner of Dimensions in Travel. She's been the owner or co-owner for 12 years. In 1983, Diana and her husband sold everything and went on a large adventure, traveling around the world for 2 years, visiting 16 countries. After that, she worked as a whitewater rafting. She worked for a whitewater rafting company and a biking and hiking tour operator. So she knows how to travel and have adventures in multiple ways. She's always excited about the next new adventure. Today, she's going to be presenting Unexpected Japan. And this is a topic that Diana knows very well. She's lived and traveled in Japan. She's lived there for, I forget, a year, I think you said, and knows it inside and out and has visited it multiple times. So with that, I will just remind you all to mute yourselves, and I'm going to hand the presentation over to Diana, who will begin, and I will mute myself. So we'll see you on the other side. Oh, just a quick other housekeeping detail is if you have questions, there'll be a question and answer period at the end. So just put them in the chat and I will read them out. So welcome everyone, and let's go to Japan.
Hello, everyone. Ohayo gozaimasu, which is good morning in Japanese. And I'd like to take you on a journey to Japan, which is about as close as we're all going to get right now. But let me take you there virtually. And I want to share a little bit about my passion for Japan, why I think most people go to Japan, and then share some surprises about Japan that every time I go, there's always something that surprises me. So I want to share a few of those surprises with you. And then at the very end, I'll take you on a couple of little mini trips to a couple of my favorite places and see if we can wrap all that up in about 35 minutes with time for questions at the end. So please post any questions you have during the presentation. So let's go to Japan and start my slideshow. And there we go. Okay. So, Unexpected Japan. There are 5 islands that make up Japan. Honshu is the main one where Tokyo is. You can see that's the brown one. Hokkaido up in the north, which is getting much more attention these days. And then Shikoku and Kyushu and Okinawa. I just did a honeymoon for a couple who wanted to go to Okinawa, and it is sort of the Bali of Japan and seems to be rising in popularity. So that's an unexpected thing for you. But there are actually thousands of small islands that make up Japan. These are just the main 5. And here you can see it's broken out by city a bit more. There's Tokyo right there, Kyoto right here in the middle, and some of the other cities that you might know rather well. This would be Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and then up in the north, they don't have any of the cities marked in the north, but there's a number of small ones, Sapporo, and up in this area here. Okay. A couple of little infograph things about Japan. There's 127 million people who live there. Their literacy rate is 99%, and they just have 1.2 children per couple, whereas in the United States, we're a little over 2. So their population growth, as you can see, is quite stable, and they have a higher life expectancy rate than Americans do, undoubtedly due to their excellent diet. Thought I would share with you the size of Japan to the size of California here. You can see that we basically have a very similar land mass. And the other thing that we have in common is that our economies are very similar in size. The number one economy in the world is the United States. Number two is China. Number three is Japan. Four, Germany. Five, India. But if you took the state economy of California and you made it as if it was a nation state, we have the number five economy in the world. So Japan and California aren't that far off economically either. Okay, I want to share with you a little bit about how I fell in love with Japan. When I was a little kid, I used to love to go to the nursery with my father because they had a little tiny Japanese garden in the back. And in my mind, the Japanese garden looked like this. You know, at 7 years old, it's the world. I'm sure it was much tinier than this, but it had a little bridge and the koi pond, the stone lantern, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. So I think that's where my passion for Japan began. And then, of course, there was the series Shogun and the book by James Clavell. Both I think you can get from the library. But this look, it was a mini series, which, you know, now that we have Netflix, mini series are not a big deal. But back then it was like over 7 nights, and every night for several hours, we went to see the Western opening of Japan. And I just thought, the Japanese culture was fascinating from this too. Of course, sushi restaurants were just beginning to open up, and I fell in love with sushi right away. I did join a small Japanese language class and started learning to speak Japanese. And I'll give you a little tip. The older I get, the more my Japanese can change. The older you get, the more you can make your words more drawn out. So instead of saying, "Ohayo gozaimasu," for a good morning, you would say, "Ohayo gozaimasu," and you kind of drag it out. Same thing with thank you. A man might say, "Domo." A younger woman might say, "Domo arigato gozaimasu." But as an older woman now, I can say, "Domo arigato gozaimasu," and you drag it out. So you'll hear that from older women as you move around Japan, that long stretch. Japanese business practices were big in the 80s. My first big job was at an ad agency, and we had a bank as a client. Everyone was studying the cohesive Japanese business methods. So that was powerful to me. Also, I am a bit of a Disney fan, I have to admit. And the very first new Japan to open up, even before the Disneyland in Europe, was Tokyo Disneyland. And I have to admit, it was one of my first stops when I finally did make it to Japan. And finally, I did make it. As Shireen mentioned, my husband and I sold everything we had. And when we ran out of money after 2 years, we weren't ready to come home. So we went to Japan and we found work, and thank goodness. And I got work as an English teacher. And these are some of my students. And it is tradition on New Year's to put on your kimono and to go for walks through your neighborhood. So I was delighted to have 3 of my, in my housewives class, which is what they called it in the 80s. I'm sure you wouldn't call it that now, but we walked the streets of Tokyo together, and I was delighted to be their guest. One of my fellow teachers, I went to her house for lunch one day, and her mother dressed me up in her wedding kimono. My perm is a bit unfortunate, but I loved wearing the kimono. My husband taught English, but he also worked as an extra in Japanese films and television commercials. And whenever they needed a big white guy, he got the call. And so he is in Godzilla 1985. He plays a Russian radio operator where his big line was "Da." So anyways, that's his bit of fame. But I'll tell you the main reason why I love to go to Japan. I am only 5 feet tall, and most Japanese women are more my size. And I thought I'd just feature a few of them here. So when I go shopping in Japan, everything fits me. I never have to hem my pants or my dresses. Everything is my size. So that's another one of my great passions for Japan. Okay, here's what you can expect when you go to Japan. Of course, cherry blossoms. Of course, incredible castles. Mount Fuji, just an incredible mountain. It's the tallest mountain in all of Japan, 12,000 feet. More on that later. Kimonos, we've already seen a bit of that. Likely this was kind of a New Year's Day type photo where one puts on their kimono. This is the Kinkakuji, the gold temple in Kyoto. The Shinkan or bullet train, I think that the Japanese transit system rivals any in the world, and it's part of what makes it so easy to get around Japan, is that every 5 minutes there's a Shinkansen leaving from Tokyo Station and Kyoto Station, all the major stations. It takes 2 hours to get from one side of Japan to the other at more than 200 miles an hour, and they are never late, always on time. Anime is a big reason for the resurge of interest among young people who want to go to Japan, is just their passion for these animated cartoons, movies, comic books called manga in Japan. Everyone's got their favorite character. A lot of young people took martial arts. They studied that while they were in school. This is karate, which means empty hand, meaning no weapons. Your hands are your weapons. And I do get families that want to go and have a visit to a karate dojo, be a part of their experience while they're in Japan, participate in a class. And electronics. This is there are a lot of little neighborhoods in Japan that have these well-lit skyscrapers, these amazing, almost like cities of the future. This happens to be Akihabara, which is in a neighborhood in Tokyo, and it's the electronics district. And the Japanese are so renowned for their small, reasonably priced, fun electronics, even today, gaming. So this is a popular area for any tourist to go visit, is Akiyabara. Bowing. I thought you should see the different degrees of bowing. The deeper the bow, the more the respect. 15%, a bit more of a head nod, 45%, deep respect. Masks. I think the Japanese culture has been known for wearing masks for many, many years, and it's part of being they live in very close quarters, and they're very respectful of the cohesive nature of the hive, the community. So one wore a mask to prevent sharing the cold that you have with others. And I think now that we have very much more of a masked culture at this time, what they did in Japan seems much more normal than it did before. I just love this movie, Lost in Translation. And I know there's been a number of other movies out, but I felt like this movie, when it came out, really showcased for a lot of people what it was like to be a foreigner visiting Japan. And certainly the Park Hyatt in Tokyo, where this was shot, has seen skyrocketing business. But if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. This is the Great Shibuya Crossing, and I'm sure all of you have seen this, and on YouTube there are videos of what happens when the lights change, but it is an 8-way intersection, and it is like an ant farm when you watch people cross the streets there. And there are a number of coffee shops that are around the perimeter where you can sit and have a cup of coffee or drink or do karaoke and watch the Shibuya Crossing happen. I taught just up the street to the right. The school that I taught with had a number of branches around Japan. So I had to cross this 3 times a week, and it was always fascinating. The Olympics. This is the symbol for the Tokyo Olympics. And it is, as you know, it did not happen. But this is the symbol that was for both the Olympics and for the Paralympics that happened afterwards. Everything has been shifted forward exactly 1 year. The Japanese were so excited to be hosting this. The last one they did was in 1964, 56 years ago, and they are reusing some of the same facilities. But this was supposed to be Japan's year to just burst, I think, on the world market, and for everyone to see how amazing a country Japan was. And I think they felt the great loss of not being able to do this. So as you know, everything has been shifted ahead exactly 365 days to 2021. And one of the things they said they were going to do is to not change the date on anything. All the souvenirs, the billboards, everything are supposed to read 2020 in order to honor that every 4 years aspect of it. We'll see how successful they are at it. Certainly, no one would expect them to go out and reprint all their souvenirs again, but I have heard a rumor that they are coming up with plans for the Olympics that there may be no spectators allowed. So the Olympics will go on, but for protection of the athletes and the Japanese people, it's possible there would be no spectators. So we'll see what happens next July. Now, here's the things about Japan that always surprise me. And I've been going to Japan on and off over the last 38 years, and there is always something that catches me by surprise. So I thought I'd just share a few of the fun ones with you and help you learn a bit more about the Japanese culture while we do it. So one of the first things is never open a taxi door yourself. There is a lever in the front, like an emergency brake almost, of the driver, where the driver is. He's over on the right, like the British do. And he pulls that lever and the door swings open. So you need to stand back. So first of all, the door doesn't hit you. And it's a way of greeting you or welcoming you in. And I think one of the things we appreciate now more than ever is it makes it all the more touchless, not to have to touch a door handle that many people have touched. So when you hire a taxi in Japan, stand back. Also, that Shinkansen, the bullet train that I showed you, there are many, many different shapes and sizes, and I thought you might like to see some of the different ones. These are all bullet trains, and as new routes are added throughout the country, each train has its own style or look to it. And so this is Tokyo Station, and some of the Shinkansens all lined up. And one of my favorite bars to go to in Japan is at the Four Seasons in downtown Tokyo, Momoji, and you can look out the window and see the bullet trains as they come and go. So, autumn. I think most people are very focused on cherry blossom season, but in fact, in my opinion, autumn is the best time to go visit Japan, in October and November. And I've got October, November 2021 in mind for my next trip. The fall colors in Japan are absolutely stunning, just gorgeous. And they have momoji, like that bar that I told you about for peeping, is called leaf peeping. That's what momoji means, is leaf peeping. And so there are tours all over Japan and great tunnels of leaves that have been built for you to walk through, and little cafes to set up in the most beautiful locations, lots of little leaf-shaped cakes for you to have. And so highly recommend going in the fall to visit Japan. This is the Ochanomizu temple, the water-focused temple in Kyoto, and it has one of the best views in Kyoto that you can ever hope to have. And so what people often do is that they might take a taxi up there, and then there's this lovely walk back through some of the scenic neighborhoods of Kyoto. Slurping. It is okay to slurp your noodles in Japan. I know we've all come to love ramen and udon here in Japan, but the idea that we would ever slurp our noodles, I think probably doesn't happen. But in Japan, it is completely acceptable to give that big slurp of the noodles. And the point is not to end up wearing it all over you, which I'm still trying to master that art, but to cool the noodles so that you can eat them nice and hot quickly on your lunch break. And slurping is the best way to do that. So please, when you go to Japan, slurp your noodles. It shows you're really enjoying yourself. Never pour your own drink in Japan. It is considered rude to do so. So if you're out with friends and your glass is getting low, whiskey, beer, sake, whatever it is you're drinking, the way that you show you would like more to drink is that you reach for the bottle and you pour and top off others' drink. And that alerts them, oh, her drink needs to be refilled. So just make sure when you go to Japan, never pour your own drink. On board the trains, this is a subway train, and it is similar on the Shinkansen and other trains. They're very quiet places. It is not the place to have loud conversations with friends. Never speak on your phone on the train. So people are reading magazines, napping, looking at their phones, always with very quiet earbuds. So the train's remarkably very silent. I don't know that you could get Americans to do that, but a tip for you when you're on the train is very low whispers if you're on board. 7-Elevens. Now, I know this would seem like a pretty bizarre thing to put into a Japan presentation, but there are 7-Elevens everywhere in Japan. They are quite the hub, and everyone goes to visit them. And one of the reasons why they're so popular is that the food is so good there. And I know that seems bizarre when you've seen those like hot dogs with the electric lights or the, in our 7-Elevens, but the food is incredibly fresh. It's a great place to get quick sushi, little bento lunch boxes, ramen, soba, noodles, whatever it is you want to get, sandwiches, egg sandwiches. It's all there at the 7-Eleven. So that's the first thing. ATMs that are welcoming of every kind of American debit card are always in the 7-Elevens. It's a great place to go to get money. And the other thing is that there's tons of weird snacks that you can get there. And I find it to be a great cultural experience. There's just row after row of unusual snacks. So I picked out a couple from my last visit that I thought were so bizarre. The Japanese always find a way to take something that is very American excuse me, are very French and make it their own. So you can see here, there is a package of seaweed flavored potato chips, excuse me, mushroom shaped cookies, and avocado flavored Cheetos. You can kind of see how green they are in the background. Just weird, but very Japanese. Also, Kit Kats, and they are incredibly popular in Japan. And when they came out on the market, there were over 300 different flavors that were invented. I mean, occasionally we have like a white chocolate Kit Kat or something like that. But here in Japan, oh my gosh, the green tea, that's the one that you see featured, the green one on the screen. Below that is red bean sandwich. Next to it is brown sugar syrup over cookie. But some of the other strange flavors they've got are wasabi, cheesecake, grape, apple, roasted tea, chili flavor, sweet potato, soybean. I'm in awe every time I see the Kit Kat flavors. It's one of my favorite souvenirs to bring back to people are weird Kit Kats. The other thing that you can do at a 7-Eleven is to have luggage delivered. And when you get on trains in Japan, you'll find that almost no one has luggage. First of all, it's a little challenging because the train stations are such a maze and subway stations are lots of stairs, little elevators to travel with a lot of luggage. So it's most common for the Japanese to transport their luggage a couple of days ahead to their destination, whether it's skis, suitcases, snowboards, and one of the most famous ones is Yamamoto, and you can see the cat carrying the kitten very carefully. Well, that's how Yamamoto treats your luggage. And you can take your luggage down to the 7-Eleven, let them know you're going to Kyoto, the name of the hotel, or your ski resort, wherever you're going, and for like $30, they'll forward your luggage on ahead to you. And I often recommend that for my travelers to do that rather than dealing with their bags. Leave your main bag at the hotel in Tokyo, pack up a small bag, move on and do some of your day trips or overnight trips, have your luggage shipped. Okay, I know this is pretty weird, but I'll bring it up anyways. Don't be surprised if in Japan someone asks you what your blood type is. And it's because it's like the horoscope of Japan. You know, what sign are you? I'm a Leo. Huh, what a surprise. Here I am. But I am blood type A, and if you're blood type A, you're serious, attentive to detail. If you're blood type B, you're the rebel. Blood type O, you're a little more carefree. And blood type AB, you're the artistic, creative one. So do be aware, it's not someone inquiring about your medical situation. They want to know what type of person you are, is by your blood type. Department stores. This is, they are so much more than department stores are. It is a place to go see art displays, to have fun food in the basement, and it is a great place to go. I used to go when I was on quite the budget. Free samples, incredible free samples of all kinds of food from around the world. Unusual architecture. This is Omotesando near the big Shibuya crossing. Very unusual architecture there. Beer gardens. In Japan, it's a little hard to tell where the beer gardens are. They are only open in the summer, but the main thing you can do is look up and you'll see the beer gardens that are up on the top of office buildings by the lit lanterns. You go up, you take the elevator up to in the office building or wherever it is. Sometimes the beer is all you can drink for a price. There's always great snacks. Always a great festive atmosphere, and it's the perfect place to watch the city change from day to night. Fireworks last a really long time in Japan. That was a complete shock to me. They can go on for 1 or 2 hours. None of this 15-minute stuff like you have in the United States. It is a very long display. The first time I went, it was a festival honoring the crossing guards of Japan. Imagine if we had a festival honoring all of the crossing guards who do such hard work getting our children to and from school. Well, they do it in Japan. The fireworks went on. We thought, oh, that's great. We walked to the train, fireworks still going on, trains pulling out of the station. An hour later, fireworks still going on. It was unbelievable, but be prepared for a beautiful long show. Weird ice cream flavors too. Most popular in Japan right now, squid ink. People are really into black ice cream. I know, but and one never eats while walking through the streets. You always sit down and enjoy your snack, your cup of coffee, whatever. Never walk while eating. Except during a festival where there is great snack food available. These are takoyaki, which is fried dough balls with little bits of octopus inside. I think you all recognize the yakitori there, chicken on a stick. Well, I bet you haven't had squid on a stick as a great walking around snack drizzled with mayonnaise. And then, of course, shave ice, which you have, I'm sure, enjoyed in Japan. Lots of strange museums. There is a Ramen Museum hosted by Cup of Noodles that's very near the cruise port. Last time I did a cruise out of Japan, we went and we toured the Ramen Museum, and at the very end, you get to make up your own cup of noodles to your specifications. It makes a great souvenir to take home. I just heard about a towel museum in Japan that the town makes towels, and they thought they would feature the history of towels in a museum to make it more of a tourist attraction. And there's a salt museum that has opened up in Tokyo, and I'm looking forward to going to that on my next trip. Okay. This is the baths of Japan, and you know what? My phone, shoot, is going off, and it is in my pocket. I apologize. I'm going to turn it off. Sorry about that. Okay. Hot springs is, of course, a part of the culture there in this volcanic country, both outdoor ones and beautiful indoor ones. And there are entire towns that are built around hot springs where everyone in the community, when you come to visit, you put on your yukata, which is a very informal kimono, and you're able to walk around the town and go to the cafes and restaurants and visit the different hot springs wearing your yukata and relaxing. And of course, everyone knows the snow monkeys, and this town that you see featured here is the Onsen, where the snow monkeys make their home. Foot baths. I know it's strange, but they are very popular in Japan, and you will find them in places where one stops to admire the views. And so you can stop, admire the views. They're in city parks where you can go and enjoy a visit in a city park, maybe have an ice cream like they're doing in that upper right-hand corner. Even cafes on a winter day where you can sit and have a cup of coffee and soak your feet in the hot water. Gardens may have a foot bath, and you can see me featured here. This is at the Hakone Gardens, an outdoor sculpture garden. And what I loved about this one is that they had oranges bobbing in the water, so you could kick them with your feet as they kind of floated by. This one was a bit more of a stream rather than a pond. So let's talk for a minute about the Japanese baths. If you've never been to one, it's a bit of a surprise what you do. You bathe and you cleanse yourself before you get into the pool. And so you sit on these little plastic tubs. They're segregated by sex. Take all your clothes off and you soap yourself up while you sit in this little plastic tub, rinse yourself off, and then you get into the bath and you sit and you soak. And it's quiet. And you just relax. There's no splashing or swimming around, and just relaxing. Usually there's instructions that tell you what to do in case you're not sure. And tattoos are not allowed in many baths, many of the old style baths. Some are starting to allow them. But as you can see here, this is the tattoos of the Yakuza or the Japanese mafia. Most of the time they're hidden by clothes, but there are baths that do cater to the Yakuza. And so if someone were to go to a bath and have a tattoo, it is disturbing of the harmony of the bath, that while you're sitting there trying to relax, you would see someone with a tattoo. Even if you're not Yakuza, the violence and crime associated with it are unharmonious. However, I am finding that many baths are starting to be a little more open-minded as older people become a little more understanding that that's not what the tattoo means. But you do have to be conscious of it. I have a tattoo on my ankle, and not that anyone's going to see that once I'm in the water, but I have a waterproof bandage that I wrap around it just to be conscious of the culture. Toilets. Toilets do many things in Japan, and they have taken the French bidet and elevated it to yet another level. And they often have full control panels to control water temperature, play music, make a rushing water sound, whatever it is that you want a toilet to do in Japan. It can do it. And lastly, before I leave the subject of toilets and baths, anytime that you go into a home or hotel, you never wear your street shoes inside of the toilet. It's considered unclean inside the toilet. So leave your street shoes outside, wear the toilet shoes that they have conveniently placed outside for you, and before you go back out into the house or the hotel or wherever you are, take the toilet shoes off and put your regular shoes on again. That's not the case in restaurants or anything. Those are more just keep your shoes on. But in a place where it's a hotel or home, please do that. This is Meiji Shrine, the most famous shrine in all of Japan, in Tokyo. It's the Emperor's Shrine. And while people may be married at the shrine, the other thing people do there is they have their cars blessed there by a priest for safety. To take my little Japanese garden to a new level, one of the things I discovered about gardens is that the walkways through the gardens tell you how the designer wants you to experience it. And so if the path is fairly straight, it means they want you to move through it fairly quickly. But if there is a meandering path or a bit of difficulty or small steps moving through, it means there are many, many things for you to look at. And the designer wants you to stop and admire each one of the little turns or nooks and crannies of the garden. Akiyabara, let's go back here again. Beyond the electronics aspect of it, you never know what you're going to see while you're there. I happened to shoot this the last time that I was in Akihabara, and there are some sumo stables nearby, and he was just buying a new mouse for his computer before he went to work. But there is a type of cafe in the electronics district that is called a maid cafe, MAID, and it is staffed by young women, and they wear various costumes, everything from sort of baby doll to Victorian to French maid. Each one has their own culture, and there is nothing sexual about these cafes. But they are very popular with young gamers, particularly young men, who like to go and have a cup of coffee and be served by these maids. And they often speak in high, squeaky voices, and they giggle, and they play little games with you, but no touching, no photographs. And you have 1 hour to drink your coffee and move on. So just in case you ever wanted to try, couples, welcome. You want to try a maid cafe in the electronics district, I encourage you to do so. And the other thing that are there are something called gacha gachas. And these are entire shops filled with nothing but those little machines that are like outside the grocery store, except they're filled with all kinds of unusual things. It's on my list to do next time I go. And one often will collect things. Like down below, you see some of these superheroes. And the goal is to try to get a kompu gacha, which means a complete gacha or a full set of something. I am not interested in collecting anything. I just want to give it a try and try the gacha gachas. Tsukiji Fish Market is no more. So in case you've been there before or you were hoping to go, it is now going to be the communications center for the Olympics. And the entire fish market, which served 10,000 seafood restaurants in Tokyo every day, has now shifted. It's gone from being Tsukiji Fish Market to Toyosu Fish Market. And it is still possible to go at 5 o'clock in the morning, either through a tour operator or figure out how to do it on your own, which is a bit challenging, and see the tuna auction, the great tuna auctions, massive sized tunas cut with chainsaws for the sushi restaurants, to see that. But the culture that was outside of the Tsukiji Fish Market is called the Outer Tsukiji. And it is the place where one goes and would have a great breakfast, shop for amazing kitchen supplies, and there's often sushi schools there. So you can see me, I went to sushi school there. But I highly recommend going to the new fish market, because it's rather industrial looking, for the tuna auction. Then coming over, they're not far, it's about a 30-minute walk from each other, have breakfast and shop. And a big bowl of ramen with the freshest fish possible is a great breakfast. Another great souvenir in that same area with the outer market is fake food. And there are not menus posted outside of Japanese restaurants. There are these displays of food. And if you see these displays of food, by the way, it means foreigners are welcome in this restaurant. If there's not anything other than a menu, it probably means they'd rather keep it to a more neighborhood atmosphere. But this fake food has to come from somewhere, and there are shops that are just filled with all of this fake food. And I highly recommend going by and buying spaghetti, pizza, donuts, sushi, whatever you want as souvenirs for your friends. Okay, a couple of little mini trips here as we wrap up the presentation. This is Mount Koya, and it's a place I'd like to take you to. It is outside of Kyoto. And so here you can see Kyoto right here. And you take the train down to Mount Koya. Koya-san is a respectful term to add the word san onto the end. And this is a spiritual place. It's one of the more sacred places in Japan, with 22 temples at the top of a mountain. And once you've taken 2 trains to get there, then you ride a funicular cable car. Then you take a bus, and up at the top of the mountain are these temples, and they host visitors. Now, I know it might be a little disturbing for some people to see what looks like the swastika for Nazis, but that is not what this is. This has been an ancient symbol for temples for many years. It is backwards to the Nazi swastika. So you can see how many temples there are, and this just gives you a further idea of what the area looks like. You make a reservation in advance, and this was the temple that I stayed at. And this is the view from my room. Thought I would share this with you. The garden outside, a bit more of the garden at my temple. This temple has been there for hundreds of years. This is what the interior looks like of the temple, the temple. And the meals are served by each person has their own sort of little area. This was my entire meal. It's called the kaiseki meal, multiple courses. I was able to join the meditation with the priest in the morning. You do get up very early. It's about an hour meditation. We sit up on those benches here on the side. The other priests are kneeling in the tatami platforms that you see more on the right side. But one of the main things people love to do up on Mount Koya is to tour this cemetery. And the founder of this particular sect of Buddhism was buried here 800 years ago. And since then, it has become an incredible honor. CEOs of major corporations choose to be buried in this cemetery, and it is massively sized and quite beautiful. This is it on a sunny day. I happen to be there on a rainy summer day, foggy, and it just added to the ambiance. But there was just cemetery, or plot after plot, that were so beautiful to see. These kinds of shrines, you'll see them throughout Japan. These are to honor the souls of children who have died, whether it is women who have had miscarriages or babies who have died young. You'll often see these in little neighborhood temples or shrines. And in amongst all of the tombstones were, of course, unusual little things like mushrooms. Now, let me just wrap up here with a quick trip to Mount Fuji. Of course, most people do want to see Mount Fuji on their trip to Japan. If you think you're going to see it from Tokyo, forget it. And most of the time that I've been there on and off, I've only seen it twice. And so you can see how far away it is and how challenging it would be to see it. You'll not see it in like that big shot that you've got there. On a clear day, you'll be lucky to see it like this. So just want to show you where Mount Fuji is again. Tokyo is right here. Mount Fuji is down here. There are two parts to visiting Mount Fuji. There's one side of Mount Fuji, and then there's the other side of Mount Fuji. And so you have to decide which one you're going to do. If you're going to go to Hakone, which is right in this area here, you're going for the view of Mount Fuji and the hot springs and the incredible ryokans. A lot of people have their Japanese inn experience here in this area. Great hiking to do. And Lake Ashi is there. And for some reason, as only the Japanese can do, they have blended exploring Mount Ashi and views of Mount Fuji and the beautiful torii gate there with a pirate boat that looks right out of Peter Pan and Disneyland, but it is a part of the experience. The other thing one can do is to go to the Hakone Outdoor Sculpture Gardens. And I absolutely love this garden, and I would go back again in a heartbeat. And I'll just point out that this thing that looks like Jenga Lincoln logs there on site, inside an artist hand crocheted this incredible net that the children are playing on. But other than that, the sculptures are incredible, and there is a museum housing a number of Picasso sketches that they have there as well. And that's where my footpath with the oranges was. I was able to sit and have a coffee, admire the sculptures in the garden. Now, if you want to actually be on Mount Fuji, you go to the other side, and you cannot take the bullet train there like you can to Hakone. It's a couple of smaller, slower trains, takes a couple of hours, it's a little more complex, or you can take a bus from Tokyo. Then once you get there, you can take a bus, either with a tour or a public bus, up to Station 5 on Mount Fuji. And that's as high as you can drive up to. There's a bit of a Swiss village up there that you can see. You can see you're about halfway up the mountain with a mountain behind you. I have been up there where it's been so foggy, you could not see anything. But on this day, I was fortunate enough to see it. Or you can stop and have a coffee and look out and admire the views of the lakes that are down below. And I thoroughly enjoyed staying in a little ryokan, also with some hot springs with great views of Mount Fuji from there. In case there are days where you cannot see Mount Fuji, we did a day trip down there. I was with my son who, great, there's the view. So we did a samurai obstacle course. There was an amusement park there where you could do a soaring over Mount Fuji kind of experience. And then we went to a flower garden. It happened to be lavender in bloom. You can see what they do when the phlox is in bloom there in this area, where we had lavender ice cream, all because we could not see Mount Fuji. So there are things to do when you can't see it there. It's still a fun experience. And finally, climbing Mount Fuji. You can do this in July and August only. It's open for climbing. You start at that Station 5, that Swiss-looking village. There's hostels and little inns along the way. You can do it on your own or part of a tour and climb up the mountain. Takes about a half a day. You generally get up very, very early in the morning. And then as the sun rises, you can climb, is the typical experience, but people do it throughout the day. And there is an expression in Japan that if you never climb Mount Fuji, you are a fool. But if you climb it twice, you are also a fool. And on that note, I will let you leave Japan. I'll let you leave unexpected Japan beyond cherry blossoms and see if anyone has any questions. So thank you very much. And Shireen, have we got any questions?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Diana, so much. Whoops, where am I? Thank you, Diana, for this wonderful presentation. I had mentioned earlier that we're going to take questions in the chat, and I don't see any yet, so feel free to, maybe you answered everyone's anticipatory questions. I just wanted to say how excited I was and really appreciate that you talked about kind of the big things and the little things and the minutia of the, ice cream flavors and the chip flavors, and also some of the small cultural details about how to be a respectful visitor. I found that really insightful, and cultural differences are particularly interesting to me, I think to many of us, and it makes us better travelers. Absolutely. But it also gives us insights into other cultures and how we all live similarly and differently. So absolutely. I do have some questions and some responses, so I will just get started. Okay. So one of our participants asks, did you ever go to a baseball game?
I have not, but it is on my list to go the next time. Absolutely. There are two rival teams in Tokyo, the Swallows and the Tigers, and they are forever competing with each other. And if you've ever seen on television some of the way the crowds behave at the baseball games, it is unbelievable, the routines, the colors and things that they do. And during this last baseball season, people were allowed to go. They had to sit every other seat, but they had to be absolutely silent at the baseball game. There was a concern that the yelling and the cheering would spread the virus. And that's just so Japanese. I just can't imagine Americans going to a baseball game and sitting there silently. But Hiroshima is where I want to go see a baseball game. The Hiroshima Carps are so renowned, and their ballpark is almost exactly like our ballpark here in Japan, and their team is amazing, and so that's where I want to go see a baseball game. So great question. I highly recommend. The concierge at your hotel, if you're there during baseball season, can get you tickets to go.
Great, excellent information. One of our participants comments that it was a fabulous introduction to traveling in Japan. And here's the question, how difficult is it to go on your own? Is it easier with a tour?
Yes, I would say it's easier with a tour in that a lot of Japan is all about relationships and sort of smoothly making things happen for yourself so that there's not a lot of stress. Everything is harmonious in your visit. And I think going with a tour group helps to make that happen. It also helps you get into little nooks and crannies where you might not have gone on your own. That being said, though, I often go on my own, and I've gone a lot by myself. It is an incredibly safe place for someone to travel alone in Japan. People are so gracious. I once saw a wallet that had been lost in a park. and it was sitting on a public bench. And the next day when I was passing through on my way to the train station, the wallet was still there waiting for the owner to come and claim it. So very safe. And I do feel that if you're not too, if you're okay with sort of bumping around a bit, it takes a while to figure things out a bit in Japan. More and more signs in English, but as long as you can be okay with sort of navigating on your own, you're going to have incredible experiences. The Japanese people are so helpful. It got to the point where if I wasn't sure where to go, I would open up a map out on the street, try to pick, because the streets are very meandery. I couldn't do it because so many people would come and ask me to help, and I wanted to do it myself. So I would go inside of a 7-Eleven, and I would go and stand in the back and look at my map in the 7-Eleven in order to be able to navigate. So either way, you'll be completely fine. It just depends on your travel style.
Great question. Great answer. So another question coming in, first an appreciation, thank you so much, and a comment from a listener, viewer, that how did they miss all the rooftop beer gardens? Are those all over or only in Tokyo?
All over. They're all over, but only in the summer. So sort of June to Labor Day-ish, August. The Japanese are very seasonal, and you probably missed them because you just didn't know how to look for them. There might have been a sign out in front. It was probably in Japanese. It probably just would have been a sandwich board out some nondescript office building, and all you have to do is just look up, and if you see the lanterns up there, just get in the elevator and go. And usually the department stores will also have beer gardens on the rooftops too.
It's a great tip.
Yeah.
So a whole series of questions from an avid listener. So what is the name of the Kyoto temple?
Which one? The one that I stayed in, maybe?
Why don't you start with that, and
Okay.
if the person asking the question isn't satisfied, he or she will just ask again. Okay, so yes, what is the one you stayed in?
Sure. The one that I stayed in up on Mount Koya was called Shokujin. And the reason I picked it is because it was the last one at the end of the road closest to that cemetery. And I was very interested in seeing the cemetery. But there are 20 others. And if you go online, there are TripAdvisor reviews, of course, on every single one. And I picked this one because of my love of gardens, and it is renowned for its incredible gardens. But there is an association that sort of manages all the reservations for those. And whether you go through a travel agent like me, or you do it on your own, you go through this association to make your reservations. You don't reach out to them directly. In terms of if you met the gold temple that the women in the kimono were standing next to in that one shot, that's called Kinkakuji, which means the gold temple, and you can't miss it when you're in Kyoto. It is one of the most beautiful. There's a silver temple too, but that's the gold temple.
So actually, she clarified, and maybe this is the one you mentioned, but it's the temple with the fall colors that you showed.
Oh, that was ochanomizu, and ochano viewing location. Mizu means water, M-I-Z-U. So it is the water temple. So there are lots of little wells and pools there. So it's called ochanomizu, and it's up on the hillside overlooking Kyoto. Very easy to get yourself there.
Okay, thank you. And which hot springs would you recommend?
Oh my gosh. Well, almost all hotels will have Japanese baths. So if you're looking just for that hot soaking experience with no view and no atmosphere, you can do that. If you're staying in a little town, maybe visiting friends, every neighborhood has a neighborhood hot spring or bath that you can go to. And I had an apartment in Tokyo, and I would go and use my neighborhood bath. They all thought that was hilarious that I would go. And then the ryokans and special onsens, which are inns that are just built around incredible hot springs, they are all over Japan, but there are some that are particularly well known. Around Matsumoto Castle is where that town was with the snow monkeys. If you just Google snow monkeys, you'll get the town. It begins with a J, Jugadano or something along that line. Beppu down in the Kyushu area, they have all kinds of hot springs there. But if you want the hotel atmosphere and the hot springs, I would recommend Mount Fuji or Hakone. They have the ryokans with the incredible hot springs. Many of them are centuries old, and so you get the atmosphere and the soak.
Nice. All right. Lots more questions. Are there tattoo museums?
Great question. I think not. I think that that would be honoring something that I'll look, or all of us can look, honoring something that is not considered culturally acceptable yet. It's still too associated with crime. So I don't think you'll see it. You might hear in the US, but not in Japan. No, I bet not.
Fascinating, the cultural associations with tattoos there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, I mean, what 20, 30 something doesn't have a tattoo now? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where is the Meiji, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Meiji Shrine?
Sure. It's actually Meiji,
Ah,
Meiji. And the Ji on the end usually means it's a shrine, Shinto, versus a temple, which doesn't have the Ji on the end. And Meiji Shrine is near the Olympics complex. It's near the Shibuya crossing. It's right in the heart of Tokyo. And there's this incredible forested area around it, which you saw with that torii gate that was there. I was once reprimanded for jogging in Meiji Shrine, which when I first arrived, of course, it's inappropriate to jog in the grounds of a shrine. But beautiful walking and forested entranceway, and then the Emperor's Temple with all the chrysanthemum emblems are right there.
nice.
And it's a must on any itinerary to Tokyo. You can take the train right to it.
Thank you. Where's the sculpture garden, which you mentioned?
Hakone. So of those two areas of around Mount Fuji that I talked about, Hakone, it's got a couple of national parks, the hiking, the ryokans, and the outdoor sculpture garden is there.
Great, thank you. You also mentioned that a town was going to start a towel museum. Have they, and where is it?
I just heard about it. There's a little island called Shikoku. It's the island nearest Hiroshima. And it's been in the news a lot lately because of they are doing a lot of outdoor sculptures in that area, and you've probably seen that magnificent glass pumpkin that is featured in that area. It's a little hard to get to, so I'm a little surprised that it's being touted so much because it's a little awkward to get there. But on this island of Shikoku, there's towel makers, and so if you Google towel museum Shikoku, it'll pop up. It's just opened.
So you'll be the first one.
I know, exactly. And the towels are a big part of when you go to a foot bath, they give you a free towel. When you go to a hot spring, free towel. Every sumo team has a little towel that if you're going to see a sumo wrestler, a towel with his picture on it. I have a couple that I use when I shower. So towels are a big souvenir. So it's not just for bathrooms.
Interesting. So one listener says, thanks you. And then do you personally lead tours of Japan? If not now, when would you do that after COVID? I adore Japan and can't wait to return. So this person may wish to contact you personally or contact your travel agency. I'm not sure if that's the nature of the question, but
Sure.
so are you planning to go after COVID? And do you go to Japan? I assume you do, but.
Yes, I do. I had a trip planned for right now for the fall for 2020. Obviously, I can't go. So I've just shifted everything forward a year. So I do plan to go in October, November next year. However, I am if you'd like to talk with me more, go to my website, dimensionsandtravel.com, and you can contact me that way. But I am hearing the new prime minister, the old the old prime minister's out, this new one in. His goal is to try to reopen Japan in time for cherry blossom season. So for outsiders, for foreigners to come. So that, I think, is the goal of Japan. And if you were planning on trying to go to Japan, it takes a long time to plan a trip to Japan. Back and forth communication goes very slowly. And like I said, it's all about the relationship. So if you were thinking of going, now would be the time to start planning your itinerary for next year, even if you don't know the exact dates when you're going to go. Probably if you have a favorite tour operator you like to go with, you'll see tours posted going starting in April, but it may be that travel may not start up again until after the Olympics. We'll have to see. I hope not. I hope we don't have to wait that long. So
Great, thank you. Very good advice. Are we clear? Where is the cemetery once again?
yes, that's Mount Koya is the name of it. It's outside of Kyoto, Kyoto, and it is about a 2-hour train ride south of Kyoto. And you can go on your own or work with, your own travel agent or me to make the visit up there. And generally people spend a couple of nights up there to just go for the day. I would hate for anyone to miss the morning meditation or to not feel like they had the time to walk the cemetery.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that looked like a particularly beautiful
Yes.
destination. Yeah. So there's a very practical question. How expensive are all the wonders you have shown us today? What's the cost of traveling to Japan in very general terms?
Yeah, I would say the costs are similar to if you were to visit San Francisco. They are it depends on the level of hotels that you like to stay at. I have stayed in hotels in Tokyo where that are $100 a night, and your view is of another building out your window about like this, and your room is very small, but it was in the heart of the Ginza, so I thought it was worth it. There are also hostels that you can stay at, and in some great neighborhoods that are under, I would say, in that sort of $40 to $70 a night range. But most visitors do tend to stay in that more 4 to 5 star level. And I think you would find prices on par with what you would see in major metropolitan areas here in the United States. You can eat high, you can spend $500 on a sushi meal, or you can eat low. You can spend $2 on a bowl of ramen at a train station. So you should never let budget be a constraint to visiting Japan. If you're adventurous, there are very reasonable ways to experience Japan.
That's a great answer. It's encouraging. So those are all the questions I see in the chat. So if anyone has another question, now is your moment. If not, I'll take this time to remind us all that we are recording this program, and it will be available on the Marin County Free Library YouTube station probably in a week or 10 days. We'll have it posted so you can review it again or suggest it to friends. We did have one final question. How does one find a place to sit and eat at the 7-Eleven? Is it just takeout?
You would take it out. So hopefully there's a little public park or some benches nearby. If there's a bench on the street, you can sit on the bench and eat, but to walk around with like your Starbucks is considered inappropriate. People do it, but it's not the cultural norm to do. So find a bench and enjoy your snack, or you take it to wherever you're going and enjoy it there.
Okay.
No seating in the 7-Eleven. They haven't gone that far.
Well, I think that's it. We're getting some thank yous. You're all very welcome. It's always a pleasure to have Diana present. I'm not sure where she'll take us next time, but we'll work that out. I'm always open to her great suggestions. So I want to thank you all for joining us. If you have any ideas about programs you'd like to see, you can put those in the chat too. I'm always want to do what you want to do. And if you're interested in getting emails from me about upcoming programs, You can give me your email too. You can send it to me privately at sash@marincounty.org, or it's on the Zoom invitation that you got. That's my email. If you have thoughts or questions, feedback, or suggestions, love to hear them. So with that, I wish you all a glorious day. Looks like it's bright and sunny outside. And again, heartfelt thanks, Diana. Have a great week.
Thank you,
and we'll be
everybody.
in touch.
It was great to go to Japan with you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking us. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.